Well, joining us from the Grand Tetons is our good friend Doug Peterson. I am right. That is the Grand Tetons. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. I don't know where
We'll go with that.
real pretty
I don't
quickly.
know. I thought
I threw you under the bus. Sorry.
very good. Well, hey, I'm up in a hot air balloon above Trossachs right now, and I know you guys think it's raining outside, but it's not. Hey, it's good to have an old friend back. By old, I mean you're old, but I also mean a seasoned veteran of this podcast. Doug, and let me just go over your accolades. So Doug founded Get Priority Straight in 2018 to help business owners and high income earners master their potential. Master their personal and business cash flow so they can reduce that stress, eliminate waste, and focus on what they do best. Before starting GPS, he coached and mentored business owners and executives for over 18 years to improve business results and find more satisfaction in life. I can't get no. While engaged in this arena, Doug discovered an undeserved need: personal and business cash flow mastery. You need to be clear on what your priorities are, and then you can proactively align your money with what's important before you spend it. This requires a behavior change to think and act differently. It's not taught, and it is key to personal and business success. So, Doug, thanks for coming back. Our topic today is money stress is optional. So you do not need to be stressed. So are you talking about money stress for personal finances or business?
Yes. I mean, they're so connected, especially for small business owners under 5 million, that your personal finances, if you're an investor working with you, that makes a huge difference, even if you own another company. And often people commingle funds. They don't realize what a mess they're making. They don't realize that they could be jeopardizing their LLC protection if they own rentals. It's just something that people just keep records and kind of think we'll do taxes and really don't have a good system to understand where their money's going and keeping it very separate.
So what would you say is the most common source of stress?
Not knowing. I mean, the fear of the unknown, when we have something we don't know how to deal with, confidence is a direct result of predictability. And if we can't understand, well, based on how much I have, based on this economy, how long can I last? What have I already committed to? Before I make a financial decision, just looking at my checkbook balance, then find myself short for payroll or sweating tax payments, it just doesn't work. So awareness is the key. Knowing where you stand, even if it's bad news. I've had people say, I didn't want to look at it, but I feel so much better. I know how big it is.
Yeah. Well, how do you reduce stress when working with partners or significant others?
Yeah, and the big problem there is we've got different styles. Somebody may be really good at looking at books and spreadsheets and want to look at data. The other person is not. That's just not how they're wired. So you need to come up with a language that works with both, that gives transparency so you can really understand where you are. And the transparency is, hey, here's what we've planned for this month. Here's exactly where we are real time. It changes the dynamic from an emotional, we can't afford it or you're spending too much, to what do we take it out of? And becomes a much healthier and easier transaction. I've had both partners and couples say, we never talked about money before because it was just too stressful to bring up. And now we're talking about it easily and often.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's like a boogeyman because you don't look for it, right? Like what's under the bed? What is that noise? What's downstairs, right? And it's because if you don't inspect and understand, it's unknown, and unknown leads to fear, right? Like you said at the beginning. So one of the biggest challenges in my industry as a real estate agent is sometimes, not always, but sometimes people cannot predict their income. What do you say then?
I get people saying, I can't predict my income, therefore I can't plan and build a spending plan because I don't know what I'm going to make. But you do know what you're going to spend. Your car is going to cost you an average of $150 a month over the next 3 to 5 years. A good used car just costs that. And often people don't set aside money for infrequent expenses. So I help people figure out what their infrequent expenses, both their business and their personal and their regular monthlies and their quality of life or perks, knowing that those things could go first if things got tight. So they really have a clear number on average that if they were to allocate money to all these particular categories, that's what all they would need to live on. It would smooth out the bumps. So it's critical, I feel. And of course, I'm selling the Kool-Aid, so I really believe in this stuff.
Sure.
To know, what it costs you each month to make decisions. In fact, my wife, when we started this years ago, 2014, she said, I thought I was going to lose control. Now I have more control than I ever thought I would have.
That's awesome. Yeah. I would say for me, it's a monthly habit. And then I also use some different tools than you use that basically it's in your face. And so you can't ignore it. And I think, having unpredictable, I believe I've created a system to have a predictable amount of income because I have certain systems there, but it's just a system. So if you can't predict your income, you can know how much you paid in taxes last year. And like you said, you know how much you can spend. So get on the stick and start with what you're spending, what you have to, I had a long conversation with someone about needs versus wants. That might've been one of my children. And, when it comes down to, there's a lot of things that we buy now that we really, really don't need. I mean, deep down inside. So when you are tracking it, it makes it harder to buy those wants because you think to yourself, do I need to write this down because it's a want, not a need? So, all right. So let's take some practical strides here. Is more money spent using cash or credit?
One of the reasons credit cards came out is, besides making a whole another industry make a lot of money, is that people spent 23% more when they put it on a card.
Wow.
McDonald's decided to, supersize, and other companies supersize things because when people used a card, they said, hey, Dan, why don't I get you a burger or some fries or something? You'd think those small purchases wouldn't be worth it, but they are. So, and again, it's out of sight, out of mind. People really don't know how much they're spending until they get the bill. And when they pay the bill, if they pay the actual amount due at the time they say it's due, you're paying for stuff you bought 27 to 57 days ago. You're not paying for what you just bought yesterday. So you've already racked up bills against next month's income. And people just don't realize that. So in my system, we make sure we have the money before we spend it.
Yeah. And I want to be clear that Doug does not advocate not using cards. He advocates having the money before you use the card. Am I right in that?
Absolutely. I've got 1.2 million airline miles just using my own personal cash flow.
Yep.
Leverage and play the game.
On a kind of a personal note, I got one of those Alaska Airline Miles card last year. Finally, it had been a while before I got it. They gave me a limit of $2,500. And I'm like, okay, I make more than that. Come on. Right. But I actually love it because I think about it as like, well, okay, maybe I don't need to buy these things here. And it actually kind of constricts it, but at the same time, I get the points. So it's pretty good.
Yeah. The only tip on that is that, if you spend $2,000, your utilization rate's 80%, which is going to drive your credit score down 20 to 25%.
Oh yeah.
Make sure you pay your bill right before the statement close date, and your utilization will be zero.
Yeah. I agree with that. That's a great tip. So just to reinstate, in order to keep your credit score high, you don't want to be over 30% on that, before due date?
Yeah. As soon as they report the statement balance, that's when the credit agencies decide how much utilization you have and how much they're going to affect your credit score by using their algorithm.
And they state the balance on the day of the statement.
The close date of the statement, not the due date, but the close date.
That's actually good to know because I can actually look at that and make sure it's paid off on that date. Yeah, that's good. Awesome. Okay, so what causes people to stay in the dark with their business and or personal finances?
Primarily two pieces. One is denial, but I find more often is they just don't know. They've tried it. It's been a bunch of work. They sit down, they figure it all out, and 2 months later, they go, I made a budget, which is really just a projection, and we didn't hit it. This just doesn't work, and it's too much work. So what they really need, in my view, is a system that is very time efficient and effective in telling you real time where you are. And then it's easy to figure out. Although there is a a cycle of change that people go through. They start out with informed optimism. I'm going to get all this done. Then they move to uninformed optimism, then informed pessimism. Okay, this might be a little bit of work. Then they go in the valley of despair. Whoa, we're spending a lot more than we thought we were. Then we move to informed optimism and then success. I help them get through that valley of despair as quickly as possible.
That is a great use of that principle, because I think that's a principle in All New Habits. Is that from Atomic Habits?
That's from 12-week year.
12-week year. Yes. I love that. I love how you're using that in that, because it is a part of every new change in habit is you run into this informed and uninformed optimism, pessimism, valley of despair, where you're just like, well, that just didn't work. I shouldn't do this at all. And that's where a lot of people quit.
And I go through all that with all new clients before we get into this, because I want them to think this is a lifelong habit. This isn't just an expensive class.
Yeah.
And if you don't think you're going to do it, let's save some money.
All right. So are people in resistance when looking at finances?
We have got so much emotional baggage around money. It's amazing. We fear a loss of control or being controlled. We fear scrutiny and judgment. So I would say, yeah, a lot of people are in resistance, but a lot of people would love to be out of that, because it takes emotional energy and it's unproductive. It's completely unproductive.
Yeah. It basically causes a lot more. A lot of problems in marriages are from finances. That's like, isn't that like one of the top things?
Yep. It's right up there with infidelity.
Infidelity. Yeah. Well, thank you, Doug, for joining us again today. I think this was a good conversation. If you're listening and you'd like to reach out to Doug for more information, Doug, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, my number is going on the screen, 206-264-4424. But the easiest way is just go to schedulewithdoug.com. It's a link to my calendar. It shows my website, my phone number, and my email address.
Now, how do you spell schedule? SCHEDULE with Doug.com.